Today we are talking about rational exponents, and rational is a fancy word for fraction. So before we get into them as exponents, we're going to do a little recap on how to combine them using different operations. So looking at number one, if I have 4/3 plus 5/3, if I am adding fractions, my denominator has to be the same. Since in number one they are the same, all I have to do is add my numerator, so 4 plus 5, that's 9. My denominator has to stay the same, I don't change it. So 9 thirds, I'm sorry, and then 9 thirds, that can be simplified to 3. Subtraction has the same denominator rule. You must have a common denominator. And in number 2, we do not have a common denominator. So what we have to do is make our denominators the same by multiplying by a scalar factor. So I'm thinking that both of these denominators could be 6. If I multiplied this whole fraction by 3, then this would have a denominator of 6. So that's what I'm going to do. Multiply both parts of just this fraction by 3, so that I have 9/6 minus 5/6. Then when my denominator is common, I'm going to subtract my numerator. So 9 minus 5, that's 4. I keep my denominator the same. 4/6 can be simplified to 2/3. So with addition and subtraction, you must have a common denominator in order for it to work. With multiplication, however, you do not need that. Multiplication, you simply multiply straight across. So 5 times 7, 35. 3 times 5, 15. Now, at this point, I could divide by a common factor of 5, and this would end up being 7/3. Number 4 is multiplication, so I do not need a common denominator, but I should have a denominator, so I'm going to go ahead and put that over 1. So I'm going to multiply these and these. 2 times 1, that's 2. 1 times 2, that's 2. We know that 2 over 2, 1. So today we are applying all of the exponent properties we've already learned. The zero, the negative, the product power to a power, the quotient property. We're applying all of them, but there will be fractions. So, example 1. I have 2a times 3a to the 1/4. I'm going to go ahead and make this a 2a to the first. So we know that when we combine our coefficients, we multiply them as normal. So my coefficient will be 6. Now, the product property tells us that we add our exponents. So, I need to have this have a common fraction, or common denominator of this. So I'm going to make this one have a denominator of 4. And if it's 1, I can make it have a denominator of 4 by just making a numerator the same thing. That simplifies to 1. So this is a to the 4/4 times a to the 1/4. And we add these exponents. So this becomes 6a to the 5/4. Now, in example B, I'm going to start by just getting the coefficients simplified. So I've got a 2 times 2, that's 4. With my x's, I've got x to the first and x to the 5/4. So I'm going to go ahead and make that x to the first. I'm going to do that on the side over here. Make this x to the 4/4 times x to the 5/4. So I'm combining these two, and then once I have this in terms of 4, then I'm just going to add them. This is going to become x to the 9/4. And my y's, I have a denominator of 2 and a denominator of 3. So I'm going to go ahead and just take the fractions for a second. 3 halves 2/3. If I multiply this fraction by 3 and this fraction by 2, then I'll have a denominator of 6, which I want. So I'm going to multiply this one by 3, this one by 2, so they both end with a denominator of 6. This is going to become 9/6 and 4/6. So this is y. So I have y to the 9/6 times y to the 4/6. So I'm going to add those, and that is going to become y to the 13/6. Does none of these simplify nicely? This is my answer. Let's try some more together. Now, this is power to a power. And remember, power to a power, we simply multiply your exponents. So this is going to become 4/3 times 2/1. You just multiply straight across. This is going to become 8/3. That means my answer is A to the 8/3. In example B, again, I'm just multiplying my exponents. So I'm going to have 3/4 times 1/2. We multiply straight across. This is going to become 3 and 8. So my answer, R to the 3/8. Now we remember that we distribute that exponent to all other exponents in the base. So I'm going to have 3/2 times 2/1 for x, and 1/3 times 2/1. So this one is going to become x to the 6/2. This one is going to become y to the 2/3. Now, this I can divide evenly, right? If I divide both of these by 2, I get x to the 3rd, y to the 2/3. That one can't be simplified. So this is my answer. Let's do example D as well. So we're distributing this 3/2 to both of our exponents. I'm going to have x to the 2/1. I'm going to make that a fraction times 3/2, and y to the 2/1 times 3/2. And then I'm going to multiply straight across. This is going to become x to the 6/2, y to the 6/2, which we know that both of these simplify. We just did this problem to x to the 3rd, y to the 3rd. So we are not doing anything new. The exponent properties still apply. We just have to know what to do with fractional exponents. If we need to add them, they have to have a common denominator, so we need to manipulate it so that we get a common denominator. If we have to multiply them, we don't have to do that. We just multiply straight across. Got some guided practice here, things that are being mixed in. So I always like to start with the coefficients, just to get those guys out of the way. So I have a 2 times 4. 2 times 4 is 8. Then I have an x to the 1/2, x to the 5/3. This is the product property, so I'm going to add my exponents. That means I need to have a common denominator. So I'm going to put my fractions over here. I'm going to have a 1/2 and a 5/3. I could get these both to 6, right? I multiply fraction number 1 by 3/3. Remember, you got to multiply the numerator and the denominator when you do this. If I multiply the second fraction by 2, then I'll have 3/6. And, whoops, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right, 3/6. And 10/6. Which means that my exponent to my x will be 13/6. Since that does not simplify, that's my answer. Let's look at example B. I'm going to combine my x's, but they do not have a common denominator, so I'm going to take these exponents over here and do a little manipulation. I've got 1 over 4 and 2 over 3. I could multiply this fraction by 3 and this fraction by 4. Then I could have a denominator of 12. So I'm going to multiply by, oops, wrong number. I'm going to multiply this one by 3 over 3 and this one by 4 over 4. I'm going to have 3 12ths and 8 12ths. So this is going to become x to the 11 12ths. So those are done. Oh, I didn't notice that 3. We'll just put that 3 out in front. This is like a 1, so 1 times 3 is 3. And then my y does not have another y to go with it. So we're just going to bring it down. Since none of these can be simplified further, this is my answer. All right, example C. I'm doing power to a power property, which we know means we multiply the exponents. So I'm just going to take 5/3 times 1/2. Remember, when you multiply, you do not need a common denominator. Multiply straight across. It's going to become 5 over 6. And that is my answer. Now, in example D, remember, if anytime you have an exponent of 1, you should put it in so you don't forget about it when you go to distribute. You're going to distribute this to everything. So for my x, I'm going to have 1 over 1, right? Try to make that a fraction by putting it over 1, times 3 over 2. I'm going to multiply straight across. 3 halves, that means I'm going to have x and 3 halves. Now if I do y, I've got 1/3 times 3 halves multiplied straight across. That is 3/6, which simplifies to 1/2. So I'm going to have x to the 3 halves, y to the 1/2. Couple more. All right, quotient property. Remember, with the quotient property, you subtract your exponents. So I'm going to look at my coefficients first. 3 over 4, that's not going to simplify, so I'm just going to rewrite that. It's 3 over 4. Now, I'm going to go ahead and put this horizontal for a second, these exponents. So I have to take 3 halves minus 1/2, p minus p. Conveniently for us, we already have a nice common denominator here. So we're just going to subtract straight across. This is going to become 2 over 2, which we know simplifies to 1. So remember, when you apply the quotient rule, your answer, your quotient rule, automatically goes in your numerator. So this is going to become 3p to the first, which we could just write as 3p over 4. That does not simplify any further, so we are done there. Let's apply this here. So this is 2r to the first over 3r to the 2/3. So my 2/3, it's not going to simplify. And then I've got 1 minus 2/3. And I have to get, this is like 1 over 1, I have to get a common denominator. And if it's 1, it's pretty easy because you just multiply it by whatever that denominator is. I'm going to multiply this by 3 over 3. So this is going to become 3/3 minus 2/3, which is 1/3. Remember, when you do your quotient rule, it automatically goes in the numerator. So this is going to become 2r to the 1/3. In example C, if I look at my coefficients first, I've got 2 over 2. We know that 2 over 2 is 1. So far I've got a 1 in the numerator. Now, My y, I don't have two y's, so I'm just going to leave that y in the numerator. It doesn't have anything to go with it. But I am going to subtract here. So I've got x to the 1/4 minus x to the 5/4. This is going to become the negative 4/4, which we know is negative 1. Remember when we use the quotient property, that automatically goes to the numerator. Now, this should be raising a red flag to you. This is a final answer. Remember, you are not allowed to have a negative or zero exponent in your final answer. So this exponent needs to be moved to the denominator. So it's going to become 1y, or just y, over x to the first, which is just x. So my answer for this one is y over x. If I look at example D, this is like 4/1, so I'm just going to leave that 4 on the numerator. My x squared doesn't have anything to pair with it, so I'm going to leave the x squared. My y's I can subtract though. I've got 1/2 minus 1/2. 1/2 minus 1/2 is 0/2, which we know is 0. So this is going to become 4x squared y to the 0. This should also be raising a red flag. If you remember, anything raised to the 0 power is just 1. So that means my answer is 4x squared times 1, which we know anything times 1 is just itself. So your answer then, 4x squared. Now, I would encourage you to try these next 4 yourself and see how you do. Just check your answers after you've done all 4. So go ahead and hit pause right now, try all 4 of these, and then I'm going to go through and write in the answers, but I'm not actually going to talk, I'm just going to write in answers. When you finish this, you have the rest of the time to work on homework. Make sure you are being very careful of when you need common denominators in these exponents.